What if I told you that the very first person to circumnavigate the globe wasn't Magellan, wasn't Elcano, wasn't any European explorer at all, but a Southeast Asian slave that nobody bothered to put in the history books? A teenager kidnapped during a colonial invasion, dragged across oceans he never asked to cross, who silently lapped the entire planet before anyone else, and then may have pulled off one of the most jaw-dropping revenge plots in the entire age of exploration. Today we're talking about Enrique de Malacca, Magellan's interpreter, Magellan's slave, and the most overlooked man in world history. We're covering the first circumnavigation debate, the brutal politics of 16th century spice trade, and the banquet that ended in a massacre. Stick around. Every single part of this story gets wilder. Okay, so picture this. May 1st, 1521. The island of Cebu in what will one day be called the Philippines. A feast has been laid out. There's food, there's wine, music maybe, and 27 Spanish and Portuguese officers are sitting down to what they fully believe is a friendly celebration hosted by the local king. Everything feels fine. It is absolutely, catastrophically not fine. Within minutes, every single one of those men is dead, massacred. The banquet was a trap. The local king had been turned against them, and the man historians believe may have engineered that entire ambush, he wasn't at the table. He was nowhere to be found. He had simply disappeared. That man was Enrique de Malacca, a slave, an interpreter, a man who had been hauled across the entire planet against his will, and who, by some arguments, had already become the first human being in recorded history to circumnavigate the Earth, before Magellan, before Elcano, before anyone. So, was he a hero? A revolutionary? A man pushed too far who finally pushed back? Or just a desperate guy trying to survive in a world that had treated him like property for a decade? The answer is, honestly, all of the above. And to understand it, we have to go back, all the way back to 1511, to a city that was the center of the entire world. In the early 1500s, the economic center of the entire planet was not London, not Rome, not anywhere in Europe at all. It was a port city called Molucca, sitting right on the southwestern tip of what is now Malaysia, overlooking one of the most strategically important waterways on Earth, the Strait of Malacca. And Malacca wasn't just big, it was insane. Like, this place had over 80 different languages being spoken on the docks on any given day. Merchants from China, Arabia, India, Java, Persia, they all came here to trade. It was basically the Amazon.com of the medieval world, except with better weather and way more nutmeg. In the 1500s, before refrigeration existed, spices like nutmeg, cloves, cinnamon, and pepper weren't just flavoring for your food, they were preservation tools. You used them to slow the rotting of meat. They were used in medicines. Nutmeg was believed to ward off the plague. In Europe, these things were so outrageously scarce and expensive that a single pound of nutmeg could cost more than a laborer made in 6 months. Controlling the spice trade wasn't just good business, it was geopolitical dominance. Portugal figured this out first, and in 1511 they sent a military fleet under the command of Alfonso de Albuquerque to take Malacca by force. What followed was a brutal siege, weeks of street fighting, bombardment, and chaos. The city fell. One of them was a teenager. We don't know his real name. History never recorded it. We only know him by the name his captors gave him, Enrique de Malacca. We genuinely don't know exactly where Enrique was from. Magellan's own will would describe him as a native of Malacca, but Pigafetta, the Italian scholar who sailed the entire voyage and kept the most detailed journal we have, says Enrique was from Sumatra. Then there's a third theory, that he was originally from the Visayas region of the Philippines. That theory makes the whole thing almost too good, because if Enrique was Filipino, when the fleet reached the Philippines, he hadn't just circled the globe, he'd literally come home. But we'll get to that. What we know for sure is this. Magellan acquired Enrique as a slave, probably around 14 years old. His will would later describe Enrique as a captured slave, taken as a prisoner of war. Quick pause. I genuinely want your opinion on this, and I'll be reading the comments. If you were Enrique, 14 years old, enslaved during a war you had nothing to do with, taken from your home, your language, your people, and then 10 years later your master dies and legally grants you freedom in his will, but the guys who are now in charge look you dead in the eye and say, no, you're still property. What do you do? Drop it in the comments. Revenge? Run? Try to survive quietly? I want to know. Okay, fast forward a few years. Magellan takes Enrique back to Europe with him. First Lisbon, then, after Magellan falls out of favor with the Portuguese king, and I mean really falls out of favor, like the king literally refused to promote him despite his service level of salty, he switches allegiance and moves to Spain. He's got a plan, a big, audacious, genuinely insane plan. Magellan wanted to reach the Spice Islands, the Moluccas, in what is now Indonesia, by sailing west, not east like the Portuguese were doing around Africa, west, around the bottom of South America, if a passage even existed, which nobody was sure about. And here's the part Enrique plays in this pitch. Magellan brought Enrique with him to the royal court, because Enrique spoke Malay. He was Magellan's living proof of concept, his walking credential. In September 1519, the Armada de Molucca sailed out of Seville. 5 ships, roughly 270 men from over a dozen countries, and 1 Malay-speaking slave being carried back from the opposite direction, toward his homeland. Magellan signed Enrique onto the official ship's roster as an interpreter, with a monthly salary of 1,500 maravedis. That's more, by the way, than Antonio Pigafetta himself was being paid, at 1,000 maravedis per month. History's footnote was getting better compensation than the guy who wrote the history. Now, the actual voyage. Look, people use the word brutal a lot, but I want you to really understand what crossing the Pacific Ocean in 1520 was like for these guys. When they ran out of food, and they absolutely ran out of food, the crew started eating rats. When there were no more rats, they boiled and ate leather. Literally, they took the cowhide off the ship's rigging, soaked it in seawater for 4 days to soften it, then toasted it over coals and tried to chew it. Men died of scurvy, which we now know is caused by severe vitamin C deficiency. Their gums swelled so badly the tissue grew over their teeth. Their joints ached so badly they couldn't move. Oh, and Magellan also executed or abandoned crew members who mutinied against him in Patagonia. So, yeah, rough trip. But they kept going. In October 1520, they found the passage at the southern tip of South America, the treacherous, freezing, storm-battered waterway we now call the Strait of Magellan. And in November, they entered what Magellan called the Mar Pacifico, the peaceful sea. The name was wildly optimistic, as it turned out, but the name stuck. March 1521, the fleet reaches the Philippines. And this is the moment everything changes. At the island of Limasawa, Magellan makes contact with a local chieftain, and when that chieftain speaks, Enrique understands him. He can communicate with these people. After sailing west from Europe, they have reached a place where his language, or something close enough to his language, was spoken and understood. On March 28, 1521, Enrique de Malacca became the first human being in recorded history to complete what scholars now call a linguistic circumnavigation of the globe. He had traveled so far in one direction that he came back around to where his own language was spoken. He had lapped the planet. Now, there's a caveat here, and historians will note this. Enrique still needed to get all the way back to his exact starting point to claim a true full circumnavigation. But if the Filipino theory is right, and Enrique was originally from the Visayas, then on March 28, 1521, he was already home. He had absolutely, definitively already circumnavigated the globe. April 27, 1521, Ferdinand Magellan is dead. Here's how it happened. Magellan had been building political alliances across the Philippines, using a combination of Christian conversion and Spanish military intimidation to bring local rulers under the Spanish banner. One chieftain, Lapu-Lapu of Mactan Island, refused to convert, refused to submit. Magellan took about 49 men in small boats toward the beach, but here's where his overconfidence literally killed him. Coral reefs prevented the boats from getting close to shore. They had to wade through water in full armor. The cannons on the ships couldn't reach, and Lapu-Lapu had somewhere between 1,500 and 3,000 warriors waiting on the beach. It was a disaster. The Spaniards were overwhelmed immediately. Magellan ordered a retreat, but was cut off. He was hit by a poisoned arrow in the leg, then stabbed in the arm. Then, surrounded by warriors, he was killed with spears and lances as his men fled to the boats. Ferdinand Magellan was dead. And with his death, something very important was supposed to happen. Enrique was supposed to go free. Magellan's will was explicit. Upon his death, Enrique was to be freed, shall be free and manumitted and quit, exempt and relieved of every obligation and subjection. Magellan also left him 10,000 maravedis, and the surviving Spanish commanders, particularly Duarte Barbosa, Magellan's own brother-in-law, looked at that document and basically said, "Nope, you're still our property. You belong to Magellan's widow back in Spain." Think about that. You've spent a decade as a slave. Your master specifically legally wrote down that you should be freed the moment he died. And the instant he died, the people around you decided that document didn't apply to you. You're still property. What would you do? Here's what may have happened next. Enrique went ashore. He went to Raja Humabon, the king of Cebu, an ally of the Spaniards, and according to multiple historical accounts, he told the king that the Spanish were planning a betrayal, that they intended to seize Cebu, take the king captive, and plunder the island, that the only way to stop them was to invite the officers to a feast and strike first. Whether this was true or whether it was Enrique doing some extremely motivated political spin to save his own life and freedom, we'll never know. What we do know is what happened next. On May 1st, 1521, Raja Humabon invited the Spanish officers to a celebratory banquet. They came ashore, 24 to 27 men, including Duarte Barbosa, the very man who had denied Enrique his freedom. They were killed, all of them, in an ambush during what was supposed to be a friendly banquet. 24 to 27 men, including Duarte Barbosa, slaughtered. Enrique survived. He was not among the dead, and when the surviving Spanish screwmen looked toward shore at the aftermath, they could not find him. He was simply gone. From that point forward, Enrique de Malacca disappears from every Western historical record. We don't know what became of him. History just loses him. The Armada de Malacca limped home to Seville on September 8, 1522. One ship, the Victoria, out of 5, 18 men out of roughly 270, commanded at the end by Juan Sebastian Elcano, who had actually participated in one of the earlier mutinies against Magellan and was still somehow allowed to keep sailing. Elcano was celebrated. He received the first ever globe on a coat of arms with the Latin motto Primus circumdedisти me, you were the first to go around me. Magellan got his name on the galaxy, the strait, the penguin. History wrote the story the way the people with ships and with pens wanted it written. The single most essential crew member on that expedition, the one who spoke the languages, brokered the alliances, literally made communication possible, was an enslaved Southeast Asian teenager who never chose to be there, who was legally promised his freedom and then denied it, and who may have completed the circumnavigation before anyone else. We named the strait after Magellan. We named the galaxy after Magellan. We did not name anything after Enrique. Maybe because he was enslaved, maybe because he was Southeast Asian, maybe because the only people writing the official history were the Europeans on those boats. Or maybe because when they denied him his freedom, he made them pay for it, and history didn't want to celebrate that. Here's what I think, and you can take this or leave it. Enrique de Malacca understood something the great navigators around him did not. He understood that the world is round, not because he read it in a book or calculated it from the stars. He understood it because he lived it, because he was taken from one side of the planet and traveled so far that eventually he came back to where his own people were. He didn't conquer the world, he survived it. And that, honestly, is a more impressive story. The surviving fleet limped home in September 1522, 18 men out of 270 on one barely floating ship. They had technically completed the circumnavigation. They got the credit. They got the parades. Somewhere out in the Philippines or Malaysia or wherever history left him, Enrique was already home. Now, there's a whole conversation I didn't get into today, and that's the modern political debate over who gets to claim Enrique. Malaysia argues he was Malay. The Philippines argues he was Filipino from the Visayas. Some scholars hold out for Sumatra. And the reason this debate matters is that the answer changes the national history of entire countries, how they teach their students, how they construct their own identity. That debate is its own deep dive, and it is wild. But right now, if this story hit you the way it hit me the first time I came across it, share it. Send it to someone who thinks they know the full story of Magellan's circumnavigation. Ask them to name his slave. I guarantee 9 out of 10 people cannot. The world went around. History forgot who went with it. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. The hidden figures, the overlooked names, the people who changed history from the background while someone else got the statue. There are more of them than you think. And Enrique, wherever history left you, we found you again.